So here I am walking home. It's a nice day, overcast so the sun's not too bright. But I wanted to share a few thoughts as I'm walking here. And, well, if you didn't know, a little while ago, a year or so ago, I decided to create a new visual aid for the whole armor of God, because it's usually depicted with the Roman armor, which is the armor that Paul was familiar with and which he was actually referencing when he listed all of the pieces of the armor. But I wanted to make a little more modern take on it. And so I got the whole armor of God using a SWAT uniform. He had still had the breastplate, helmet, he had their shield. And when it came to the sword, my first thought was to use, I believe it's called a Beretta pistol. But then I considered that the sword is not a ranged weapon. Oh, sorry, I dropped something. Yes, the sword is not a ranged weapon. It's a very up-close personal weapon, a very elegant weapon. And Paul had access to ranged weapons because they had bows and arrows. So if he meant it to be a ranged weapon, he could have said it was the bow of the Spirit, but it's not. It's the sword of the Spirit. And so in making this visual aid, I decided to use the Bowie knife. That is also standard issue to most SWAT. Now, I had a lot of people question me on this and tell me I should have used the Beretta. My wife being one of them. But when I explained my reasoning there that the Bowie knife is the up-close and personal weapon, like the sword, she grudgingly agreed. But recently I was thinking back on that visual aid that I had created, and it occurred to me that nowhere in the scriptures is God ever depicted as using a bow, using any kind of ranged weapon. He's always using a sword. He doesn't even use spears. You know, when Adam and Eve were kicked out of the garden, it was a flaming sword that was set to guard the tree of life. When the captain of the Lord's hosts met with Joshua, he came with his sword drawn. When Balaam was traveling in his donkey, steered him out of the way. He steered him away from the angel who had his sword drawn. In the book of Revelations, it is a sword that comes out of Christ's mouth. And all through the Doctrine and Covenants, Christ describes his words as being sharper than a two-edged sword. Now there is one reference in Isaiah where Isaiah calls himself a polished shaft in God's quiver, but that's him. It's not a vision of an angel or depiction of God himself. As far as I can find in the scriptures, God always uses a sword. On the other hand, the devils, Satan, Lucifer, they're never depicted as using swords. They're always slinging fiery darts. They're the ones that attack from a distance. They're the ones that want to hide what they're doing. Christ, God, gotta walk around that. But whenever God does anything, if he's going to punish you, if he's going to do anything, you're going to know it. You're going to know who's doing it and why, because he does things up close and personal. But Satan, he acts in the shadows. He attacks with the fiery darts. He tries to get you when you don't know who's attacking. And I find that very interesting.